Welcome once again, another edition of Quoth the Raven, the Sprite Raven. I'm your host of the Sprite Raven, 29-year veteran writer, illustrator, and editor of comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. And tonight is a comics crowdfund review episode where I talk about stuff that I got in the mail from crowdfunded projects on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. This week we got 3 projects, or rather this episode. I might do another one. I did get one set of stuff this week. Or last few weeks, actually. But we got 3 projects we're going to be discussing this evening. And I'm wearing a shirt from one of them. Let's see if I can get the camera here to show it more. This is from Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie, which we'll be reviewing first. And I got this shirt as well as the comic. And a snazzy metallic bookmark. It's actually metal. It was interesting. They're, I guess you could call it their bouncer type guy. He's a troll or something. And so that was in the pack. And then they had this, I guess it's supposed to be like a postcard, but it's much larger than a postcard. Which is the entranceway to their carnival. And here is the book. Try and get the angle here so that you're not getting so much light there. There you go. You can see it fairly well there. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the review here. And this is $5.99 book from publisher Unlikely Hero Studios. Writer is Paul Hanley. The artists are Matt Frank, who does the figures and character designs, and Paul Hanley, who does backgrounds. Colors are by Paul Hanley with, it looks like Rob Ploma did the flats, and maybe John Kutzer did some extra work as well. Lettering is by Matt Kreutzer. The genre is supernatural adventure and was released in January of 2022. What it's about? It's 1963 and having a carnival of 666 monsters ain't the draw it used to be. Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie is one of the last 2 mythic shows left in the United States, trucking from one backwater town to the next. It's dirty work and sometimes you barely make the nut, but America is still the land of plenty of rubes. For this season at least, Miss Medusa is hiring, and you can still run away to the circus and join it. Mythics, cryptids, gods, and atomics only, please. Humans need not apply. Enter Sharon, who's a dwarf, who has applied to the show to be their publicist. We get introduced to the world of the carnival through her eyes. This is very much the same feel as the first 20 minutes so of the movie Nightmare Alley, which was just released last month. By Guillermo del Toro, which we'll be talking about tomorrow during our film discussion. It just has real supernaturals instead of humans pretending to be supernaturals. What did I think of this book? Well, this is what I thought Nightmare Alley was going to be like. So because the movie wasn't that, and I'll discuss that more tomorrow when my co-host John Norris and I talk about the movies tomorrow evening, this comic made up for my disappointment in that regard. The problem is, though, with this book, it's all set up and it really doesn't give you a story yet. It's just all introduction to the characters and the concept more so than a story. And at $5.99 for a book, I think it needed to be more than just an introductory sequence. I do hope it's sold well enough to continue the story, but because of that price, I've kind of am afraid that the story won't get finished. And this is a problem that I find a lot with the crowdfunding books, because you get a really good book, but it didn't get enough support, and they can't continue the series because they just aren't getting the backing. It's kind of the same sort of thing, however, with the comic book industry and working with Diamond, because if you don't get enough orders, you got to cancel the book or resolicit the book or what have you. And that's not working very well right now either, with COVID and all the delays in shipping and printing and stuff right now. So 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But hopefully this will do well enough that the story will get finished at some point. Again, it's not a bad comic. It's an excellent comic, actually. But because it is a crowdfunded book and people might not stay enthused, as the wait time from time a book is backed to the time it gets actually delivered, and prices being what they are, I don't know if people will stay interested in the book. I know I certainly would buy this via Diamond if the publisher tried to get it carried through Diamond, but I suspect that retailers might balk because that's what they do. That's why a lot of books are in crowdfunding as it is. This is a mature reader's book, due mostly to the language and tone of the story. There is a lot of cussing in the story. So there's a few things in there that make it more of our more mature reader's book. So we'll see where it goes. But for an introduction, it's a well-drawn issue, and the story, like I said, it's more introductory stuff rather than a full story. And I would like to have seen a little bit more, but overall, 4 out of 5 stars. And here is the artwork from the book. And this is Sharon, which is not her actual name. I forget what her actual name is at the moment. But she's having to talk with Miss Medusa in the actual trailer about getting hired as a publicist. And it's, pretty well done. This is Medusa and Sharon talking to the union rep of the workers in the carnival, because she just fired some people, and earlier in the story, I don't know if there was justification or not per se. It seemed like there was, but they're having their argument anyway. And then she leads Sharon to one of her star people's trailers, and she's not a fan of the person, but she's going to try and talk him into signing a contract. And, she kind of manipulates her into signing the contract, and Sharon's not happy about it. But just as she's about to sign the contract, the side of the trailer wall gets busted through because the atomic ants have broken loose, and they have to try and capture them and round them up in the next issue. So it should be quite interesting on that. Our next book is Memoirs of the Morbid by publisher Monarch Publishing. It's an anthology title, over 60 pages. with 5 different self-contained stories in it, featuring writers Grant Lankard, who is also the publisher, Ian Mondrick, David Schuler, Brian K. Morris, and Matt Miner. Artists Grant Lankard, Matt Mossman, David Schuler, Claudio Adriano, Roy Moon, Valentina Perrone, and Clay McCormick. Lettering by William Stitchwell. The cover artists include Antonio Brando, Grant Lankard, and Roy Moon for the do-gooder variant, Clay McCormick and Russell Paget for the coaxial variant, Simone Giuliani and Ron Riley for the trenchcoat killer variant, Mark Ollivant for the Kiss as Cold as the Grave variant, and lastly, Chris Palmieri and Roy Moon for the Succession cover variant. You're seeing the coaxial cover here. I will show all the covers shortly. As you can see, this is the do-gooder cover. I don't know what happened here. Something got messed up here, maybe. Let me see if I can. Whoops, there we go. Yeah, we got something missed here, but that's okay. Like I said, there's 5 stories here, and we're going to go ahead and try and review all of them. Originally, I did have Grant on the show a couple of months ago when we were promoting the actual campaign. And so, okay, I know what it is. The show, the book has the 5 stories, but it also has introductions to each one of the stories with a central host character called the Ghoul Master, which is written and drawn by Grant Lankard. And he's trying to do an homage, but sort of also a parody of the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. That's what the Ghoul Master is, sort of. And I know what he was trying for, but it didn't quite hit the mark. And that's what I was getting at on that point there. But I think he also knew that he wasn't hitting the mark, and he played that up to a certain level of degree. So, we'll see. The actual stories in this book are pretty well done, very well done for what they are. Coaxial, which was written by Ian Mondrick and drawn by Matt Mossman, is probably my favorite of the lot. It's about a woman stuck in her home due to the pandemic, which is a much worse pandemic than COVID-19 has been, but clearly was an inspiration for this story. And how the disease has also affected animals and turns them into something horrific. And how she lets a stray cat into her house to be her companion before the scientific community realizes that the animals are infected. It's just a really well-told story. And just well done. The next story is The Succession Clause, which is written and drawn by David Schuler. It's about a military person in what appears to be some sort of ersatz medieval period who attacks his female commander when she gets promoted over him under the notion that if he kills her, he'll succeed her and get that position, get her station. The story is good, but Schuler's art is a little too rough for my liking. It's not bad. It's just I just have a different preference of style, I guess. It's fairly standard black and white indie level work. I've seen much worse. I've seen much better. It's just there. The story concept is what carries that more so than the art. Next up is Do Gooder, which here's the cover for, which is written by Matt Miner and drawn by Clay McCormick. McCormick could use a little seasoning as an artist, pardon the pun, but he has a very similar stylization to that of Jeff Lemire, which you don't really see. This is not McCormick's art on the cover here. I think he should have done the Do Gooder cover, but for whatever reason he didn't. I would like to see McCormick evolve and surpass that style, but he's in that same vein. The script in this one was actually the weaker of the 2 elements for this particular story. And there was one thing that kind of bothered me in the lettering that needs to be cited. There's a caption in the middle of the story where they're talking about the age of a person or of people, and it's lettered out. They say they were in their 80s. That is incorrect. When you're writing out an age, you spell it out. When you're talking about the 1980s, then you can use the shortened 80s version. That's just an editorial nitpick on my part, but it was something that immediately jarred me out of the story when I saw it, and something that publishers should look for, I think, when you're doing that sort of thing. Next up is A Trenchcoat Killer, written by Grant Lankard and drawn by Valentina Perron. Much like the Succession Clause, the art's a little bit too rough for my taste, but it does the story. It tells the story functionally well enough. The story is also one of the more predictable ones in the book, but it is also the only story in the book that is actually morbid, in my estimation. Rounding the book out is Kisses Cold as the Grave, written by Brian K. Morris and drawn by Claudio Adriano. This is far and away the most professional-looking art in the book, and the story best captures the sense of the era that inspired the concept, which is the old Tales from the Crypt, the Vault of Fear type anthologies of the Warren era of the 50s and 60s. I also think it's the best executed story overall, but I think Coaxial was the best story overall in terms of concept. Overall, I do think it's a decent collection of stories, and I enjoyed reading the book. I do think it would serve the book better if a centralized theme was enforced per issue. I think it would also help whoever writes the Ghoul Master segments out, because trying to find something to talk about each one of them, and yet they're different stories that have no real connection to one another, makes it difficult to have the character simpatico, I guess you could say. So I think that might be something for the publisher to consider in the future. It is recommended for ages 16 and up, and I give it 3.5 stars. We'll take a look at some of the artwork. Now, see, here's where the first was. For some reason, it got put in the wrong part of the page. Okay, we'll just go ahead and pass that up. But there's the covers. This is the cover for Kisses Cold as the Grave by Mark Ollivant. The Trenchcoat Killer by Simone Guglielmini and Ron Riley, and Christian Palmieri and Ron Moon for the Succession Clause. These are the covers in addition to the other two. And I'll show you the books themselves. This is the Trenchcoat Killer, and you can see how this cover has a metallic gloss on the logo. I don't know why this was done only on this one cover particularly, but it was. All the other ones don't have that, and I thought that was kind of a weird thing. It should have been done on all of them or none of them, I think. Just my opinion. You see there's no reflection like that on the other one. Again, this is the do-gooder cover. I'm trying to get it so you guys can see it without the reflection of the screen. Put it over here. There you go. This is the Succession Clause story. Kisses Cold as the Grave. And Coaxial. The other suggestion I would make to improve this in the future is this is a book that is saddle stitched in printing production, and you can see how well it does not fold over. I would recommend doing it with a perfect bound binding for the spine instead. Make your book flatter. I think that might be a better solution in the future, but it doesn't kill the book. I mean, I can get this squeezed into the books in a box or something and flatten them out more, but it was just kind of weird how all of them have that kind of open fold over. This is the Ghoul Master Art on the left, art by Grant Lankard. This is part of the opening sequence of Kisses from Cold as the Grave from Claudio Adriano and Roy Moon. And this is the Trenchcoat Killer storyline, part of the artwork from it. Basically, the teenager's reading his comic, and it's basically showing his own life in the comic. And he basically, he thinks that, the Trenchcoat Killer's out to get him, but it turns out it's something else. I don't want to spoil it. But anyway, our last book of the evening is Paleocene, issues 1 through 3. I got all 3 for $20 from publisher Keesey Comics. Writer-artist Mike Keesey is the writer-illustrator. The genre is animal adventure in the Paleolithic era. That's like 70 million years ago. It was released originally between 2020 and 2021 over the 3 issues. The most recent was number 3, which came out in December, and I received my package on December 30th. Of 2021. Well, it's about 66 million years ago, the world ended. A meteorite over 10 kilometers in diameter slammed into the Earth. The explosion released 2 million times as much energy as the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated, and all life in the vicinity was instantly obliterated. For the rest of the world, however, death was slower. A shroud of soot and dust engulfed the Earth. Without sunlight, the plants withered and died, setting off a domino effect up the food chain all the way up to mighty predators like Tyrannosaurus Rex. 3/4 of all life on Earth perished, starving in the darkness. But we survived. Not we as in humankind. This is much earlier than humankind's existence. But our early primate ancestors, they persisted. Which, with clutched hands and shining eyes, they witnessed the end of the world and the early dawn of a new one. In this story, we follow a mother primate who's stuck with her children in the last tree standing, wondering what's keeping her mate from returning, as the rest of her troop live on the ground, where they are easy targets for other predators. Having to leave the tree for sustenance, she returns to find one of her children missing and the other one horrified. She tries to raise the troop to her aid, but they are jealous of her status as mate of the troop leader, and he's not around, so they refuse to aid her. Ostracized from the troop, she has no choice but to try and track her missing child on her own, with her son in tow, only to learn a horrible discovery. The story then shifts from Mama's point of view to that of her mates, as we learn what happened to the troop that was out and why he hadn't returned. And we also get introduced to other species and their perceptions of the world going on as well in issue number 3. What do I think of this book? I think it's a very well executed comic series that is similar to other great comics of this genre, like Stephen Bissett's Tyrant, The Age of Reptiles, and others. Keesey deviates from those type of books in that he does have his animals speaking, whereas the books I named are pretty much either silent or the narrative is from an omniscient narrator who isn't the character that we see in the story. But he knows how to capture the same kind of charm that those other books have. His art is very solid. His style reminds me of somewhat of Richard Corbin, mixed with Ricardo Delgado, who does Age of Reptiles. I've only fully read the first 2 issues so far, and I quick scanned through issue number 3, so I'm not fully aware of the story of number 3, but I was impressed with how Keesey changed his art style in the 3rd issue to shift with the perspective of the bird character, that from the monkey type characters. However, I'm not in agreement with Mr. Keesey that the book is for ages 9 and up. There are a few things in dialogue that skew slightly older, in my opinion, and I would say it's more for 12 to 13 years old and up. I recommend it for 12 and up. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. And here's some of the artwork. I think he does a wonderful job here. The baby monkeys are asking for her to tell a story, so she tells a story of the end of the dinosaurs, and just the way that he's drawing the hands here and making different shapes of the animals, of the dinosaurs, with her hands, is just exquisite design. So many people don't know how to draw hands very well, and here he is drawing hands, making different shapes that resemble, different dinosaur heads and different dinosaur shapes. It's just like really, really well told. And then one of the babies, the younglings, is looking outside on the ground from their tree perch, and of course they think a dragon is coming to kill the kids, and it's not. It's a serpent, and of course they want to try and help, but they can't. Unfortunately, the serpent took one of the babies and fed on it, and other things happened here, but it's a shame. But that's unfortunately that's what happens in these type of stories. They show you the realism of natural life and how animals prey on each other. And then at the end of the first issue, she was starving, so she went and got some food for herself, so she could not just have sustenance for herself, but to feed her younglings via milking. And that scrack sound, think of it as a squawking bird of prey sound that they heard. And she walks in, she comes to the stuff, and she asks where her sister is, and Scary Hunter came, and actually it's one of the birds that actually got into their hidey hole up in the air and pulled the sister out and took it. And the second issue, of course, she confronts the troop, and one of the troop members is like, oh, she probably killed her kid, and is trying to hit it somewhere so that we won't blame her or something, and she goes ballistic and beats the living tar out of this one monkey for that. But of course, like I said, the whole troop doesn't want to really support her anyway. They're jealous of her status as the leader's mate, and having that high ground station. So her youngling mentions that the hunter, that they were thinking as flies, and well, what do you mean it flies? The hunter that I was telling you about doesn't fly. Well, this thing does. And then she realizes, well, if it flew, it's nowhere near where the troop is, and she has to go out into the world and take her son with her to try and find her daughter. And she finds the troop, and they're not in good shape. I'm not going to tell you what happens. I recommend that you get the book from Mr. Keeley. You can get his books again at keeseycomics.com. And you can also find all of these books on Kickstarter or with Memoirs of the Morbid. You can go to monarchpublishing.com and find it there and get that and other books from Grant Lankard's group on that site. And I don't know if Unlikely Heroes has a studio site or not, but you can still look them up on Kickstarter as well. So that is all for tonight. Tomorrow morning, I will be back with another live draw session. I'll be finishing up the coloring work on the Wile E. Coyote drawing that I did earlier today. I'll be doing a coloring of this piece. And then I'll also be inking and coloring a Marvin the Martian piece as well. Marvin the Martian and his dog Canine from Looney Tunes. That'll be tomorrow morning. I don't know the exact time, probably 11, but it might be a little bit earlier. Depends on the situation. I don't know how the weather's going to be tomorrow, but I have some appointments I'm supposed to try and keep tomorrow if the weather permits. But after everything is all said and done, tomorrow evening at 8 p.m., we will be back again with another review show. And we'll be reviewing Nightmare Alley, not next week, but tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Nightmare Alley, the movie, 1947 edition versus the 2021 edition. How good was the original version of this movie, and how does the current version by Guillermo del Toro stack up? Figaro, that's John Norris, my co-host, and I will be discussing both films, and we'll try to answer these questions and more. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 for that as well. So if you would like this video, or you think others might, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to continue to get support from this channel. As always, I thank you for watching and for your support. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on Facebook, Lewis.BrightRaven, on Twitter at LewisBrightRave2. You can see more of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven, exclusively on YouTube. If you have questions, comments, suggestions for content, Quoth the Raven LBR72 at gmail.com is the address you reach out to me at. You can also request commissions for art, information on that as well at that address. If I don't get back to you within, say, 24 to 48 hours, try LewisBrightRaven at yahoo.com as a backup. Again, I thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a good one. See you in the morning.